Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. If you are Android, we recommend Spotify or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. If you're Apple, you can use Apple Podcasts. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our new Discord server, $2.99 per month. Chat with Heat fans all day long, season or off season. Got 10 channels on there. You get updates from us, the hosts, but also you can communicate with and get to know other Heat fans. Built a whole little community there outside of Twitter. $2.99 per month. Link is right here in the description on the podcast feed and on the YouTube channel. Also, check out the great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, including some big Miami Heat fans, some friends of ours. You can find them at BigBrotherIronwork.com. That's BigBrotherIronwork.com. This is where you go for your aluminum fences, your gates, your pergolas, your railings, all of your metal work. They've got 20 years of experience. They're established experts in the field, licensed and insured. And here's the big thing. In addition to their pricing that's competitive, they offer free estimates across Florida, including Dade, Broward, and the Keys. So check them out, BigBrotherIronwork.com. Again, that's BigBrotherIronwork.com. In English, give Abraham a call at 786-406-5780. En Espanol, Daniel, 305-218-8681. And now today's episode.
Down the Biscayne. Yikes. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all band. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust. It's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm going to try to get my ear to pop for the first time in a week. That will be helpful. So if I sound more nasally than usual, that's probably the reason. I'm Ethan Skolnick. God, this is annoying. Anybody know a good ENT that'll take me for free? Ethan J. Skolnick or 5 Reasons Sports. You can follow Greg Sylvander at Greg Sylvander. Actually, I don't really want to hear a lot of stuff over the next 24 hours, not related to the Miami Heat, but we'll try to provide you some content today. I've kind of set Twitter ablaze the last couple of days just with my thoughts about trading and not trading. I know I promised I would wait for the transaction stuff, but let's just be honest, okay, at this stage. Here's who's not available for the Miami Heat for Game 5. Now, Kristaps Porzingis is not available for Boston, so this tips the scale a little bit. Has the calf injury. It's not an Achilles. Celtics were worried it was an Achilles. I was outside their locker room after the injury. I had to go down and get something from my seat, and they were like scrambling around, and that was kind of the rumors that were being spread in the building. It does not appear obvious. Well, now we know it wasn't an Achilles injury specifically, but he's going to miss a few games, and likely, I think he'll probably miss the Celtics second round series, which is going to be against either Orlando or Cleveland, which just, again, makes me ill because if you think about it, the Heat should be advancing as far as Orlando or Cleveland, and they're not going to. They're down 3-1 in this series. And again, here's who's not available for them. Jimmy Butler, as you know. Josh Richardson, that's been a long time now. We don't even talk about it anymore. They replaced him with DeLon Wright and Patty Mills, who, by the way, those two guys, buyout pickups, combined for 50 minutes in Game 4. 50 minutes. That's what Eric Spoelstra had to play DeLon Wright and Patty Mills. Buyout pickups. Okay? That's where they're at in the backcourt right now. So no Josh, obviously. No Terry Rozier. Again, he has not played in the playoffs, so they haven't gotten back anything on that investment, at least not this season. Now no Jaime Jaquez either. He has a hip injury. So Jaime, who actually led the team in games during the regular season, 75 games, hit a wall, got through the wall, was starting to play better. He won't be available. And again, even if they win this game, I don't know if he'll be available going forward. And Duncan Robinson is available in name only. I mean, he played 3 minutes in the last game, and then Spoelstra hooked him. He's not healthy. As I told you guys the other day, he told me he would talk to me about all this when it's over. That tells you everything you need to know. And Kevin Love, although available, is not available to Eric Spoelstra. He can't play him in the zone. And so the non-BAM minutes in this series have been disastrous. And so really, you've got a starting lineup, and I don't know why Sean didn't include him when he was posting who they might start, but you got a starting lineup. I would think of Bam, Jovic. Maybe you keep Highsmith on the bench, so you start. I don't know. You go with Caleb back at the 3 with Tyler and DeLon. Probably.
That was my first thought, and then many people said Haywood Highsmith would be the guy, but DeLon was my first thought.
Yeah, I think it'll probably be DeLon so that you can bring Patty off. I can't believe we're doing this. Patty off the bench with Highsmith, and then like the players, the artists who used to be known as Kevin Love and Duncan Robinson. And then, I mean, if you need to go deeper, you've got 2 centers you could play. I'm sure if Pat was coaching, he'd throw Orlando Robinson at the 3 right now, but you've got Orlando Robinson and you've got Thomas Bryant, and you can't play your 2-ways. So
what a mess.
Probably Jamal Cain probably would have gotten minutes in this series, or maybe even Alondas Williams or Cole Swider, but you can't even play them because they're 2-ways. So, I mean, let's just be honest. The team that the Heat are putting on the floor in Game 5, if they played a whole season together, give them some minimum guys to fill out the roster. How many games is that team winning? 28?
Less. 25.
Right. But that's what you're throwing. I mean, it's basically Bam, Tyler, Caleb, and injured guys and minimum guys past their prime. That's pretty much what they're throwing out. Haywood, I guess. I mean, look, okay. I can't spin this.
No.
I can't carry water on this. I also can't blame them entirely for their current predicament. I've made it clear, Greg, that, when the karma of basketball, right? Spoelstra talks about it all the time. If you take the regular season more seriously, and I know people are going to ask me to define that, okay? There are games that they just gave away.
Yeah.
Whether it was the players or whether even organizationally, I go back to that game in Brooklyn. I mentioned that with Dono on Five Guys today. That game in Brooklyn at the end of that road trip, like you lost to New York, Bam's hip was bothering him, so you shut him down, but you really didn't have anybody playable in that last game in Brooklyn against a bad team. That's a game that probably could have been a win, but again, end of a road trip, second night of a back-to-back, tough loss in New York, and so you don't play the guys. I just think when you look at the totality of the season, if you grab 2 more wins somewhere along the way, you're not in a play-in. And I don't know if Jimmy gets hurt in Game 1 of a playoff series, but I do know he got hurt in the play-in. So that's it. I mean, it's hard to really look at it and say, oh, they just got bad luck again. Yes, they got bad luck, but
they still were close to being out of the playoffs in both scenarios. Like, let's just be honest.
Luck is the intersection of preparation and opportunity, right? Like that's kind of where you're at, and they just didn't. This was a season that was rough. I mean, 46-36, right? Throw in the 2 play-in games, they're 47-37. Now they're 48-40. They're probably going to go out at 48-41. I mean, and their net rating after all this, by the way, is going to end up being sub-zero. Yeah. So it is what it is. And Barry's got this stat about how they haven't beaten any future Hall of Famers. There's another stat like they're 1-11 as a home underdog this season. I think now it's 1-12. They're 0-10 against the top 5 teams in the West. Against the Celtics now they're 1-6. So throw that in. That's 1-16 against the Celtics and those teams. It's hard to spin this right now. And so I'll ask you this question. As ushers were saying to me, see you in October, as I was walking out, people I've known for 20 years. Parking attendant. I literally turned in. I had to, show them on my Apple Wallet, that I had, I had to pay, but I had my pass. And so there's a parking attendant there who knows me and whatever in Bayside. And he goes, see you in October. I was like, okay, I'll see. I said, I might see you for the draft. I might see you in June. But I think it raises a reasonable question here. Like, how are you going to feel when this ends? Just viscerally, how are you going to, before we get into all the transaction stuff, how are you going to feel?
There's a part of me that's going to be happy that it's over. I'm going to be honest. It's been a long, grueling season. And if it's been grueling for me, who's sitting on my damn couch, it's got to be grueling for a lot of other people that are a lot closer to it. And and obviously doing shows and podcasts probably has something to do with it too. But just straight up, I think that this team needs a break, and they are thin and they need a break. And so I will be at a place where it's okay that they're going to have some basketball off. I think it raises really big questions about where they go next and what happens next. I think that this offseason has the propensity to be fascinating in a lot of different ways. But for me, I'm ready to exhale. I'll take another win up in Boston. I always want to rip Boston Celtic fans' hearts out. But ultimately, I'm probably, when this is over, gonna say let's look towards next season, because this one, it felt like it never got off the ground in a way that felt healthy, in a way that felt effective. This season sputtered from the minute the Dame transaction fell through, in my opinion.
I mean, it felt like 2021. I mean, we kept saying, what is this season going to be? And the thing about the Heat is there is such continuity with their front office, with their core people, that we have markers, right? Like I mean, everything. And you and I mean, obviously, I've covered the team since 96, yeah. And obviously, you've been following it that long. We can refer back to other seasons. Say this season was like this season. This trade they made was like this. This build is like this. This player is like this. And you and I kept, as we were doing these podcasts throughout the year, we kept referring to 2021, like the season that never really started, right? You had the short rest. And look, that's the other thing, okay? As we look for sort of green shoots here, Jimmy will get some rest now. Like, he's had to carry, I mean, even though they didn't go to the finals here before, they went to the Eastern Conference Finals. They went to Game 7. So you're talking about playing deep into May, playing into June, carrying a lot. Bam, and now he's going to get a longer offseason. Bam, okay, who's asked to do everything for this team because they don't have anybody to do the stuff that he does. And we're seeing it now again in this series. He gets a break except for the Olympics, but I think the Olympics is actually going to be an enriching experience for him.
Agree.
It'll be less taxing than what he deals with and probably more fun. He doesn't have to be the face of the franchise and be out in front of the media all the time because, I mean, let's just be honest, Jimmy doesn't want to do that stuff. So Bam ends up having to shoulder everything. He's the guy in the community. And you know, now he can actually go relax, okay, and play a little basketball with LeBron and Curry and Durant. Nobody's going to be focusing on Bam, even if he does end up getting some starts, but he's probably going to play behind AD and others anyway. So I think that that's good for him too. Here's where I'm at with it, okay? To me, as soon as this thing ends, I'm ready to start rethinking things. That's where I'm at, okay? I mean, people know that I speak to folks in the front office. I speak to players. I'm not around as much as I used to be, but I try to get as many perspectives as possible. And because of that, sometimes, I'll shift a little bit in my thinking, because it's sort of the last person you talk to. And I try to be nuanced and process stuff and not be like, the guy screaming on Twitter. But I have been, obviously sympathetic to the Heat's view on a lot of this stuff, because we couldn't force. What were you going to do? Take Joe Cronin at gunpoint and put him in a room and get him to be a competent, reasonable professional executive? No. Okay. I mean, there are actually people who voted for Joe Cronin second in executive of the year voting, whereas the reason that Brad Stevens got executive of the year is they made 2 transactions, one of which was with Joe Cronin. So, okay. But anyway, and so I was sympathetic to the Heat's view on that. And also, I think when you look at the Bradley Beal transaction, I've said it repeatedly, they were right. They were right. Okay. Again, sometimes the best move you make is the one you don't. And if Pat, and by the way, it was Pat, not the Arisons. Okay. It's like fan fiction. You can't kill it sometimes. If Pat had been okay with that no trade clause and the Heat had gotten stuck with Bradley Beal now, like $120 million the last 2 years of that deal or close to it. I mean, Phoenix, they literally would give him away for a ham sandwich right now, except you can't. Okay. So look, there are certain things that they didn't do that worked out all right. The other thing is I've talked about how they were more in on Drew than Dame. Watching Drew in this series, I don't know that would have been the right move. I think they were kind of saved from themselves on that one. Like, Drew fits really well with Boston, and they've been much better with him on the floor, and he's still a plus defender. But man, he's inconsistent offensively these days, particularly in the playoffs. And that's not a one-year thing, by the way. This is like a 3-year trend for him. So honestly, yes, he's a Heat culture player, but I think Heat fans would have been complaining that they weren't getting enough scoring from that spot anyway, and that he didn't really solve the problem. So I think that there are things that didn't happen that ended up working out for the best. And because of that, they have a certain modicum of flexibility this offseason. But they also don't have the most flexibility. Okay. They're and I think that Heat fans need to recognize that. And, this idea that you're going to go, band for band or pick for pick with OKC, Utah, New Orleans, and you're just going to say, well, we have a more attractive destination, so the stars are not going to want to go to those places. At a certain point, okay, if a team has 6 first-round picks for every 2 that you have, you're going to get outbid, all right? And a lot of these players are going to go to some of those spots because, you look at an OKC, like let's say that the Thunder, who have 15 picks over the next 5 years or something, and probably the best young roster in basketball. If you're let's say they lose to Denver or Minnesota in the Western Conference Finals. If you're a star, and you could be the guy who gets them over the hump, that's attractive, to go play for OKC for a couple of years. I know the city sucks. Okay. I've spent time there. It's one street. Okay. All right. But look, Paul George didn't mind playing there. KD opened a restaurant there. Again, and you don't have to live there all the time. You're on the road half the time, and the rest of the time you can be in Miami. You don't have to live there all full time. So my point is, Heat fans, this idea again, anybody we want, we're going to get. I'm trying to caution them on that. And it's not necessarily because the Heat aren't willing to spend. They don't want to be in the second apron for good reason. Okay. They still are top 10 in overall salary. But I just think that we have to have some balance, but to understand what they can and cannot do. They need willing partners, whether it's the player to ask out and stick with it, unlike Dame did. Okay, and the agent not to do something stupid like Aaron Goodwin did, all right, and muck up the whole thing, okay? Or, or they need willing trade partners, okay? And people who actually deal with them. And I look at Cleveland, they have people talk about the issues at the ownership level or with Gilbert. They have a decent relationship with Kobe Altman. I know that. I know Kobe personally. So, and they've done a deal with Kobe that saved the franchise, which was getting Dwayne back. So could something work out? Sure. But if Donovan Mitchell is the target, Kobe Altman also has a relationship with David Griffin. David Griffin is the one who put him in the Cleveland organization. So what I'm saying is there are going to be opportunities, but that doesn't mean there's any certainties.
No.
But where I'm at, Greg, and then I'm going to let you jump in here and carry, where I'm at is I'm ready to consider all of it. That's where I've changed. If you're to tell me you considered trading Jimmy and blow it up, I'll listen. If you're to tell me you go all in with Jimmy and give him another year or two to make this thing work, I'll listen. As long as you're clear that this can't be Jimmy plays 50 games and so you still end up in the 7 or 8 seed. Okay? What I'm not really comfortable with anymore is what I liked before, which is this blended, bridged timeline. It feels like they're pulling in 2 different directions all the time. I'd rather at this point they pick one, they commit to it, and if they're going to go young, go really young with Bam being the anchor of it and commit to his timeline. And no, you're not going to have as many picks as OKC and all the rest, but at least you know how to develop players, etc., and you can make up some of that difference and you have Spo. Or okay, go all in on Jimmy. And I would try to keep Jovic. Okay, that's what. But if it has to be Hawkins, it has to be Hero, it has to be picks, it has to be Rozier. Okay, then do that. But where I'm at is I'm open to everything. I'm just concerned about trying to have it both ways, as I feel like sometimes they've tried to do in last couple of years.
See, and I think the parity in the league means that they may lean into trying to continue to bridge things, and you're going to be disappointed by the way that this goes, because ultimately they're not that far away from being a 2 seed. We talked about all the squandered opportunities. You think about transactions. They do have flexibility in movable contracts, but they don't have much other flexibility other than that. So it's like they're going to have to get creative in the trade market to get something done. And if you're not talking about trading Jimmy, which I'm not, then it's about like, what can Tyler and those other guys go and get you? I don't think having 3 $40 to $50 million players is going to be sustainable going forward. I think it's going to be so punitive that you're going to see less and less teams do that. You're going to see more balanced rosters. It's going to create more parity in the league. It's what the league wanted. And I think that the Heat are going to be in a situation where they can build a team that still contends, but doesn't have to necessarily give up everything. And people aren't going to love that. But I do have a feeling that they're going to look to make moves, but it's not going to be every single asset on the table unless one of those guys, the very few of them, and they have a willing trade partner. I just don't think that they're going to reach for a guy with every asset that they have. I think that they would rather bridge things versus reach, just to try to, bring one title to Jimmy. I don't think that they're going to reach for a player like, I'll give you an example, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan. I don't see that kind of stuff happening.
A B-star, basically, like a guy who you don't even know that he really makes you better.
Correct.
Gets you points.
It's got to be a slam dunk.
I agree with you, and this is where it's going to kind of be like the Mitchell thing, for instance. Like we know how this is going to go. Okay, the whispers are going to start. It's already started. All right, they get eliminated by Orlando. The buzz is going to build. It's going to become a social media thing. The speculation is going to be, where would he agree to go? We're going to hear that. He's got a year left on his deal, so he's got a little bit of power here that Dame didn't have, because basically he could say, okay, I'm not going to resign with whoever you send me to. We talked about Utah. He's not going back there. All right. And so, the expectation is it's one of the New York teams or Miami, and one of the two New York teams, he's not a good fit. Brunson is, putting Brunson with Mitchell in that backcourt, to me feels like it's a Knicks move in the past, but if Brunson gets them to the Eastern Conference Finals, I don't think that's going to be the move that they make, is to
agree.
Is to go all in. And they still got to decide what they're going to do with Anunoby, who has given them what they need this year. And then obviously Randall is somebody they got to make a decision on going forward too, on how you reintegrate him. But so it may come down to Miami or the Nets, and then we may start to hear, like what Miami's willing to offer. And I'm sure a lot of it's going to be BS. Okay. Smoke screens from agents, from other executives, etc. And if they just miss again, all the fans are going to be pissed, because again, that's the guy that they're going to get. That's the guy that Heat fans are going to get their heart set on this offseason. It's pretty clear at this point, because of his relationship with Bam and all the rest of it. Yeah, right. Or KD. Well, and KD is a different conversation, because then you really are going all in on now, right? Because Mitchell, you're on Bam's timeline. If you're on the current timeline, but you're on Bam's timeline. Talking 27 years old. If you're KD, you're going in on now. Same as Bron, who, by the way, not going to go anywhere. He's going to be in LA. So, I think that it's setting up for Heat fans being frustrated by any direction or any perceived near miss. I'm just saying, from the big picture view, I do think a direction needs to be chosen. And we know the direction is not going to be tank. They don't do that. They do also have the 15th pick in the draft this year. That's another asset, or it's another player that they could pick up if they're trying to go young and add to the stash of Jovic and Jaquez and Bam. And we'll see about Tyler. But I asked this question. I want you to answer it on the other side here, okay? Heat fans are already complaining, and I know Barry was instigating a little bit of this today, and obviously people were coming at me. Heat fans are complaining about them having run it back, and they're going to run it back again. I'm curious, as we come back here, for your definition of what running it back is, because I don't know what it is anymore based on the way that Heat fans talk about it. All right, before we do, I want to mention another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. It's called Autograph. This is a new app. You can follow your favorite teams like the Miami Heat. You can get your content all in one place. Use the code 5 when you sign up. Just go download it. Again, it's called Autograph, just like it sounds, just signing your name. They've got all kinds of contests on there also. They've got giveaways with like seriously discounted signed jerseys, ticket giveaways, and more. This is where real fans get unreal rewards. So check it out again at Autograph. Make sure you use that code. You're familiar with the code with us. It's code 5, FIVE. You can find it also at autograph.io. Get all your Miami Heat content there. You can find some of ours there as well. All right, so what to you, what does run it back mean?
I know what the fans think it is. It's Tyler Hero being in a Heat jersey next year.
That's what it is, isn't it?
Just cut the shit. That's what it is, yes. It has nothing to do with anyone else but Tyler Hero. That's how polarizing he is.
Okay, that's what I think too. It's about the third guy, right? Like we always talk about the third guy.
Yep.
That's what, because here's the thing. If we go back, right, if Twitter existed, and thank God it didn't, because I can't imagine what those Heat Knicks series would have been like, all right?
Oh my God.
When they lost, when Allen Houston shot one down, or when Mashburn passed up the shot, right?
The public pressure to fire Riley.
Oh my God, could you imagine? But here, beyond that though, like Jamal Mashburn, right? He would have been the Tyler Hero, right? By far, like as soon as he passed, I mean, it would have happened before that, but as soon as he passed on that shot, or even in 05, it would have been Eddie, right?
Oh,
I mean, when he didn't come through with Dwayne, failed in the playoffs, all that kind of stuff with
and
Dwayne
it was Eddie.
Right. I mean, nobody was saying at that point, once Wade was with Shaq, there's some revisionist history, by the way. There were people, and I used to get the emails because I'm old, okay? I used to get the emails, Skolnick at sun-sentinel.com or Skolnick at herald.com or Skolnick at pbpost.com. I got the emails from people saying, maybe we should include Dwayne in the Shaq trade. Maybe we'll be okay. Maybe if we keep Karan, maybe we'll keep Karan. So I know some of you are out there. If you, again, that was 20 years ago, but okay. For those who say, I never wanted to trade Dwayne, like those we're talking in the context of Jovic or Bam a few years ago. There were some of you. I'm telling you, there were some.
They were on Real GM message boards too. I can tell you that.
No, that's right. They were absolutely at Hoops Hype message boards. They were on those spots as those things started to proliferate. But there would have been, for sure, push to trade Eddie. Okay. Push to trade Jamal before that. All right. And ultimately, the Heat did both things. And we've talked about that. Like, that's ultimately, you get the most calls about the third guy. And ultimately, you move the third guy. I'm just glad you just put it so succinctly, because to me, that's what this is about, too. When people say run it back, I'm looking at who was on the court, okay, in game 4. And I'm not saying this is by choice. Obviously, Jimmy would be out there, okay, etc. But, I mean, like, there were, I think, 3 guys on the court who played any role in the finals last year.
Yeah, they're all new players.
Right? I mean, well, Tyler was on the team, but he wasn't playing. And then you've got Duncan and Kevin, who, yes, they were there last year for the playoffs, and they were significant reserves. They're hardly playing now. So this idea, again, of running it back, like, I'm trying to, I think it just means trade Tyler. I think like if they trade Tyler, they'll say we're not running, because you're not running. Ultimately, yes, coming into the season, they ran it back with Lowry, but by halfway through the season, they made what I still believe was a smart trade for Terry Rozier, a trade I would make again. And if he was playing in this series, it would be harder to argue. And he was contributing and scoring 18 and doing some of the things he was starting to do, with that assist to turnover ratio and everything before this mysterious neck injury, which the Heat don't seem to want to update on. Like, we wouldn't be saying as much that they were running it back. Like, even if Jimmy and Bam and Tyler were playing, like if Terry was adding something significant with Jaquez and Jovic, we wouldn't be saying that.
That's the thing. Jaquez and Jovic are starting. What are we doing? This is the complexion of this roster is completely different than last year. You had 2 pending free agents in Gabe and Max. Yes. Now, where it gets tricky is if you don't trade Tyler, you may bring everyone back minus Caleb, and then you have to ask yourself, is that a better team? And so I think that's where the inspiration from the fans come of they think Tyler.
Well, that's going to be the running it back thing, Greg, though, that when they brought everybody back but PJ. Or when they brought they brought everybody back but Jay, right? Like 1920 to 2021. But you're right, that was not the case this year. Like they ultimately gave bigger roles to Jaquez and to Jovic. No Max, no Zeller, no. I mean, he smaller role, no Dedman, right? They moved him off him last year. Like, this is not right. But I do think that if they come back, that's simply what it is. If they come back with Tyler, people are going to say they ran it back.
Yeah. it's ridiculous, but I also see where fans are getting to the point where they want to see what Jimmy and Bam look like with another talented player, and they're hoping Tyler Hero can fetch said talented player. Although I think it's going to take a lot more than Tyler Hero to get as talented a player as Heat fans want.
Well, I don't think that the idea of trading Tyler to go get the star now, I think that ship has sailed. I think if ultimately, if you're trading Tyler, you do not give him away because he's still a young, talented player with still some upside. But I think it's more about reshuffling the roster and getting, I think, positional size, honestly, for him.
You don't need 3 superstars.
Right. Well, look, Denver doesn't have 3 superstars, okay? Denver has 1 superstar. They've got a guy who's a playoff superstar in Murray. And they have 2 players in Gordon or Porter. Now, the way Porter's playing in this postseason, who could be the second best player on a very good team. Okay? But not the first. Like that's kind of what and then KCP is like the perfect plug and play role player. And then they filled out their bench with young guys. So you don't need that. OKC does not have 3 superstars right now. They've got 1, and they've got 1 who looks like he has the potential to be, and then a third guy in Jalen who I think is really damn good. Okay, but like they don't have 3. It is not this whole idea of you need 3. So I'm with you on that. But Heat fans are not going to be happy, I don't think, unless A, Tyler is moved, and B, Tyler is moved for somebody who is perceived to be a star. I think that's the majority of the Heat fans who just want a transaction to say that. Let's close with this, okay? Because, again, we're all over the place, and I'm still formulating my thoughts on all this, okay? And we'll do more detailed, streamlined episodes on it. But that's kind of the point of this episode. I'm open to anything now. I really am. Like, I can't watch this again.
Me too.
I can't watch them being a flatline team and just, when we get healthy, when everybody knows they're never going to get healthy. Like that's not, and I do think a different approach needs to be taken in some ways to getting more players on the floor more consistently or whatever. But what happened this year doesn't work. Here's the biggest picture question. Okay. If you're going all in on Jimmy, if you're going to give Jimmy this last dance, so to speak, right? But not the way Dwayne got it, because that was just like ceremonial and let's just get through the season until we get more talent and let's make it all about Dwayne. If you're trying to give Jimmy a real championship chance at an age where most stars are out of the league already, okay, and he's got a ton of tread on the tires anyway, and he's had accumulating injuries over the past few years, all right, what is your expectation of Jimmy? Like if you're going to trade Jaquez and picks or Rozier or even, and I do not do it, okay, entertain the possibility of trading a 20-year-old who's 6'10" with multi-dimensional skills and a great attitude, okay, in Jovic. If you're going to do all that and give up on Tyler, okay, at this stage, and maybe not even re-sign Caleb so you have additional flexibility, whatever it is, because you're going in on the Jimmy build, like one last thing. What do you want from him?
I want him to be ready for the playoffs and available more than he was this year, but the player that they bring in needs to be the inning eater. That's the whole thing. They need a guy who can get them through the regular season, carry them to a top seed so Jimmy can tap in when it's playoff time. That's like the key to this whole thing. But the availability, the uptick in availability would have to come. And I think that's a tough ask. I don't know how you go to him and say, we need you available. Like that doesn't sound like a conversation that would go too well with Jimmy Butler. So I would want him to be available, but it also would be prefaced by the superstar that you bring in would have to be a guy who could carry you throughout the season, kind of like they envisioned Dame Lillard.
Well, I think Jimmy would give up that, like the scoring. I don't think there's any problem with that. Okay. But to me, this goes hand in hand. You're basically committing resources to sort of the last breaths of the Jimmy build, right? And at the same time, we're saying, well, be ready for the playoffs, which I know is going to get turned into taking a day off here, taking a day off here, and some of this was personal issues this time. Again, some of his injuries, some of his personal issues, some things he can't play through. I'm not questioning a guy's toughness when he played 3 quarters on a busted MCL. Okay. It's not about that, but it's about just the general context of taking the regular season overall more seriously. So you don't have to dig out of these holes. Okay. He doesn't have to pull a Houdiniac all the time. So I'm with you on the innings eater thing, But this is also going to come with a contract extension, most likely. Like if you're committing to the Jimmy build, you're basically saying we're committing to the Jimmy build, and then you're giving him another year or another 2 years at the max. You're going to give a guy that kind of money when he's going to be 36, 37 years old with that kind of tread on the tires. You better be damn sure he's going to give you 60 to 70 games and that he's going to play them like with passion, because that was the other thing this year, Greg. Like we talked about it, like during the regular season, how many games were there where we're like, he's clearly the best player on the floor? 5?
Not a ton. Do you think Jimmy would go year to year to that point about looking like there could be a decline, or do you think he wants as much of an extension as he can get?
I think that's going to be a topic of a lot of podcast episodes. So we'll just leave it. We'll just leave it there. I was here for the Dwayne thing. And so I don't know. I mean, and the Heat are scarred by the Dwayne thing to a certain degree on everything that happened during that period of time. And they don't want to kick another superstar out the door earlier than he wants to go. But then you've got the context of what happened with Kobe in Los Angeles and the Heat's very real reasons that they had, legitimate reasons for not wanting to hamstring the franchise with a crazy Dwayne contract in 16. Like there's, and to, get the money later and all the things we talked about, we could revisit all that. I lived all of it. And
give it to Hassan.
And they don't, right. And they don't want to relive it again. But like you said, KD was a target then. Spoelstra made a great presentation, and maybe KD will be a target again. We'll see. Lot to think about. But first, there is a game. And we just, look, I just hope they're competitive. They fight. I give credit to the way that guys like DeLon Wright and Patty Mills were professional and played in the last game. But this has been a tough ask all year. And honestly, the way it finishes, it causes, a lot of need for reflection. So we'll get to all of that after the game. All right. We've got autograph.io. That's autograph.io. Make sure you check that out. Big Brother Ironwork.com, and of course join us on the Discord where we'll continue all these conversations. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.